We are thrilled to be here. Thank you so much. I met your pastor, I think it was 2 months ago that we met. And it was such a great meeting. And one of the things that impressed me about your pastor is that he really has a heart to disciple and to train you guys up. And he has passion, purpose, and drive. And we've met a lot of pastors, and I hope you guys know how lucky you guys are. And the other thing I noticed as I came in today is this is a very happy church. So I commented to Cheryl, go, everybody here is smiling. It just seems that there's a real joy. And I think that, again, that has to do with your leadership and just a good spirit here. And the other thing I noticed is how long the Mexican happy birthday song is. In the United States, our birthday song is, this is your birthday song, it isn't very long. Hey! So that's one of the restaurants. And so anyways, I don't know if you noticed, but if you sang the Mexican birthday song twice, you'd have to start over because it would be time for a new birthday. So this is my wife, Cheryl, and she's going to introduce herself. Is that it? Yeah, just hold it in. There you go.
Buenos días. Mis padres son misioneros en Juárez y hemos vivido también en Venezuela. Entonces es un placer de nosotros, un gran placer para nosotros estar aquí con ustedes. Y nomás queremos decirles poquito de nuestra familia. Mi esposo va a decirle más de mis hijos, pero quería explicarle poquito de mi vida. Yo viví aquí en Estados Unidos, pero mis padres son misioneros en Juárez. Entonces siempre nos íbamos a la iglesia allí. Y cada domingo mis amigas me rogaban a quedarme con ellas. Cuando habíamos vacaciones, entonces mis padres me dejaban quedar ahí, ellos se regresaban aquí a Estados Unidos y yo me quedaba allí y nos comíamos juntos, paseamos juntos, nos subimos a los camiones, íbamos al centro, compramos raspas y también celebramos Día de San Juan, si recuerdan, no sé si todavía lo hacen, pero cuando tiran agua, unos se mojan. Tengo muchos recuerdos muy bonitos y especiales de mi tiempo en Juárez. Y eso es cuando el Señor me dio un corazón muy grande para la gente hispana. Y estamos muy felices de estar otra vez aquí en El Paso. Nos fuimos a Dallas, Austin, por 20 años. Nos casamos aquí, él es de Chicago, y nos fuimos por 20 años. Y el Señor en un día dijo, van a regresar al Paso. Y muchas cosas pasaron y aquí estamos, ya han sido 5 años. Y estamos bien felices de estar aquí con ustedes y ahora mi esposo va a hablar con ustedes y yo voy a terminar los últimos 10 minutos.
Okay. So, thank you, babe. So, I'm here today to speak on technology. And, I'm sorry? I will. Mm-hmm. And so today I'm here to speak about technology. I am not against technology. In fact, I spent 20 years as a computer programmer. I actually love technology. I was one of the early adopters of email and computers. I used to build computers. I like it. But what I'm seeing, and what I think a lot of you are seeing, is that these devices are kind of, in some ways, starting to take control. And I don't know about you, I became very concerned about 5 years ago about how much time people are spending with this. And am I the only one? How many other people here have had that concern? It's quite a few. And there's other people who don't want to raise their hands because they're worried about themselves and they don't want to give it away. So if we could we bring up the slides and we'll begin. Okay, Anna, can we go to the next slide, please? And before we start, we typically speak on parenting issues. This technology one is kind of a side issue for parents, but I thought if I'm speaking on parents, I should prove that I am one. And these are actually my children. Those are not actors. The one on the left is my middle. He is my youngest son. That's Chase in the white shirt. Chase is your average all-American, just typical boy. His 2 favorite things in the world to do are to blow things up or set them on fire. That's what he enjoys doing. And sometimes he switches it up. He sets it on fire and then waits for it to explode, right? That's variety for Chase. My other son on the far right in the blue shirt, that's Lucas. And Lucas is my artist and my creative. So he likes making soap. He likes making art. He likes making biscuits. Anything that is creative, that's my son, Lucas. And the tall one on the back left, that's my son, Michael. And Michael, I'm going to tell this entire story during the parenting seminar, but Michael's the reason that we got here, because when he was 10 years old, he told us, he says, Mom, Dad, I'm not like you. I'm probably not going to go to church when I grow up. And at that point, Cheryl and I realized that we had really made a large mistake in raising our child. And almost all of our seminar is based on mistakes that we've made. And through God's grace, my son said that to us, and it changed the way that we parent completely. We didn't throw everything away, but it made us completely reevaluate, why are we communicating, or how are we communicating the beauty of the gospel to our kids? Because he wasn't getting it. And we're so thankful that God revealed that to him while there was still time. All right, next slide. So when I say technology, a lot of people think, okay, it's a good thing, but my guess is that a lot of people also think this. Help. How many people can agree with that? It's like, I understand this is a powerful thing. We can't unplug anymore. It's not an option for us to just go no internet and nothing. It's not an option. But we're also very concerned because it seems to be taking over the souls of our children, taking over our souls, taking over our time, all of our imagination. And we're seeing kids who are in love with football, Mexican football, not American football, right? Kids are in love with that and with Legos and with playing with their friends. And all they want to do now is sit around, and it's causing a great deal of concern. Next slide, please. I saw this. You guys get it? These are kids playing tag. So instead of actually touching each other, they just send a message to each other that says, you're it, right? This is kind of funny if it wasn't so true. But I thought it's prescriptive of today's culture. So next slide, please. Right now, 47% of people worry that their child is addicted to their mobile device, and 20% of them are extremely concerned about how it's affecting their mental health. Next slide. Sean Parker is the ex-vice president of Facebook. He's the guy that started it, or one of the two men that started it. And this is what he said. He said, social media platforms, and he's talking about Facebook at the time, were designed to hook users. You're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology, and the inventors understood this consciously, and they did it anyways. Next slide. Chamath Palihapitiya, he is the executive vice president for Facebook growth. This is what he said. He said, I feel tremendous guilt. I think we all knew in the back of our minds something bad could happen. And what's happened, and what he said is, it is eroding the very core foundation of what people behave. These are the people who invented Facebook. And Sean Parker has now started an organization that is designed to encourage you as parents to get your kids off of all social media. He says, this is dangerous. Hey, would you like me to push this closer or farther? Closer? Is that better? Okay. All right. Next slide, please. We're now at the place to where everybody is starting to recognize we have a potential problem. The World Health Organization recognizes gaming addiction as a mental health problem, and it's in the same category as drug abuse, alcoholism, and gambling. So the World Health Organization has realized this is an international phenomenon. Next. And I think this is the perfect picture. I look at this device and I see it both as a blessing because I can pull up Google Maps and get here, know exactly it's going to take me 22 minutes from my house to get to this place. I can use it to run to make sure I'm not going ahead or behind on my talk. And at the same time, I find myself constantly pulled by the ding, which is a text message or an email. It's like, what is it? And it never, ever leaves me alone. And so I am vexed by it. And I'm also blessed by it. And I think we're all kind of in the same boat. There is no human technology ever in the history of mankind that has taken root so quickly, so deeply, so pervasively across the entire world. In fact, they think that by 2024, the entire surface of planet Earth is going to have Wi-Fi. And in these remote areas, they're going to have satellite balloons. They're going to have balloons floating with receptors that are getting satellite receptions and then beaming Wi-Fi down all over, so every square inch of planet Earth will be covered by Wi-Fi. We're close to it already, and they think we'll have that within the next 4 to 5 years. So next slide, please. In fact, they're starting to call it electronic cocaine. That's what Dr. Peter Wybrow calls it. I have a couple other quotes from other people who use that exact same terminology. In China, Asia, Japan, China, South Korea, they always run ahead of the United States and Mexico in technology adoption. They are kind of the trendsetters. And so you can look to see where they are, and you will know that's where we're going to be unless things change. And China has now identified a term called IAD, Internet Addiction Disorder. And they're saying it's their number one health crisis, and they believe they have 20 million people who have IAD, Internet Affection Disorder. South Korea has 400 technology rehab centers. And to put that in perspective, South Korea is 1/7 the size of Texas. So that would be the same as 3,000 tech rehab facilities in Texas alone. That's how pervasive it is in Southeast Asia at this point. And that is where we are trending. Next slide. And just as we talked today, whenever I say gaming, everything I'm saying actually applies to social media. Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, okay? And everything that I say about social media applies to gaming because it is hooking into the same set of what's called neural pathways in your brain. And they hook you through different techniques, but biologically what's going on in your brain is exactly the same. So when I use one, I'm also talking about the other, and I'm tending more to talk about gaming because it has better visuals, okay? Next slide. So the question is, why is it so addictive? Because I grew up with the very first ever Nintendo console that hooked up to your television with a little joystick, and I had that. It was the greatest Christmas present ever, but I did not play that for 10 hours a day. There was a very significant difference between the games that we have today and the games that we had of old, like Pac-Man and Asteroids, if anybody is old enough to remember those, right? Gaming today is a completely different thing. Next slide, and here's why. First off, it's a 3-part story. I'm only going to focus on the first part because it's the most important. There's a thing within our body called a dopamine feedback loop. And the way that it basically works is dopamine is the feel-good transmitter in your brain. Your body, God designed it in a way that when something good happens to you, you win a game, you escape getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, whatever it happened to be, right? You get a dopamine rush. Your body produces it. It feels good. Some people actually call it brain cookies because you always want one more cookie, right? So people call it brain cookies. Your body gives you that dopamine hit, and then it teaches you and encourages you to repeat that behavior. It is designed to get you to do it over and over again, but it can be hacked. And that's what gaming companies and social media companies have figured out how to do. The problem with gaming and social media is that the amount of dopamine that gets secreted into your system is the same as the amount of dopamine that you get when a husband and a wife have relations. The thing is, it would be for relations for 5 hours, or 10 hours, or 15 hours. And that's too much. Our bodies aren't designed for it. Our body can't handle it, and so your body reacts. There is too much dopamine, and so it will dial back the production of dopamine. That's not good. It sounds like a solution, but it isn't, because your body has to have dopamine to feel right. And so now the person who was able to do social media for 2 hours and get a dopamine hit and feel satisfied now has to do it for 3. Well, eventually they have to move to 4, and then to 5. And if you've seen some of your kids perhaps, they started playing games till 10, then it went to 11, and it went to 12, and now it's 3 a.m., and you hear them, and they're still up in the middle of the night. And I can tell you this, I have been that. There have been times when I've stayed up and said, I'm just going to play for an hour, and I played till 2 or 3 hours, and I did not even notice it. I've had games that I have deleted off my hard drive because I'm like, I can't play this, and I'm a 53-year-old man. So I am not a gamer, but I do it as a pastime. But we are past the place where children are doing it as a pastime. It now becomes their only source of entertainment or to relax. So what happens with the dopamine is your body shuts it down, so you have to keep doing it. And now you're actually in the addictive cycle, just like a heroin addict. The first hit gives you a high. The second hit is not the same. And so you have to take more. The third hit is not the same. Heroin addicts have a phrase called chasing the dragon. And what it means is they just have to keep taking more and more and more to get the same effect from the first one. It's extremely dangerous. So where we wind up with social media and gaming addiction is once you've done it enough, you get to the place where dopamine is not being secreted in your body like it should be, and you have to play a game or you have to get some likes on Facebook just to feel normal. You have to get that dopamine hit, and it requires technology now. That's now the place where some people are and where many people are trending. So that's the scary part. So let me talk about two quickly other aspects to this story. Next slide. I'm not a brain scientist, but I'm going to talk about the frontal cortex. And the frontal cortex is the part of your brain that's in the front. Okay? That's this part up here. That section of your brain is what you use to make good decisions. Excessive dopamine stimulation shrinks it. It gets physically, measurably smaller, which makes it less effective. And so you get in the cycle where you know you're gaming too much. The dopamine is shrinking the part of your brain that says, you know what, I think I should stop now. That's what happens. That's the first part. So the frontal cortex takes the damage to it, takes away your ability to actually give you some self-control. And then there's a process called myelination. Myelination is the white matter in your brain. We mostly think it's pink. There's a lot of white matter, and it's like the insulation in the wires of your brain. Myelination is a very important but very delicate process. It's what makes your brain fast. It's what helps you to remember things. It's what gives you muscle memory. And it gives you the ability to process emotions correctly. Flashing screens and excessive dopamine stimulation inhibit myelination. And people who have myelin abnormalities exhibit the exact same symptoms as children with ADHD, Alzheimer's in adults. It makes children more susceptible to actual drug addiction, and it gives them that slow, lethargic, kind of disconnected from the world unless they're talking about gaming and when everything in their brain lights up, because that's the only pathways in their brains that are still alive, and everything else has been inhibited through myelination. So you have dopamine, you've got frontal cortex, which gives you the ability to say yes or no, and you lose that, and then myelination, you just cannot process information or process feelings. And one of the things that you lose is the ability to empathize with others. Isn't that strange? But that's what's happening. So next slide, please. So the bottom line is this. Children do not have the neurological ability to respond appropriately to the level of dopamine stimulation in modern games and social media. My son Chase, my kid who loves to blow things up, he is a candidate for gaming addiction because that's what you get to do. You run around and blow stuff up, right? It fits with his personality. I thought for the longest time that my son Chase had a problem with his self-control and discipline. And he does not. My son is actually very disciplined. I've seen him work. He works hard. But when he was on that game, it's like he is a different person. And what's really going on is the 10-year-old brain is fighting against multi-billion-dollar companies who have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in neurological research, making Call of Duty, Command and Conquer, even phone apps as addictive as possible. They're not spending the money on research and development to make the gaming and the networks run faster. They have that nailed. They're spending it by hooking kids up to CAT scans, checking respiration, perspiration. They're looking for a physical and a biological response in us, the adults, and our children. And while they're playing the game, if it doesn't cause the physical stimulus that they're looking for, they go back and re-engineer the game. That's what we as parents need to know. We need to be cognizant of this because this is a clear and present danger. And then we have to figure out some strategies. And we're going to get to some strategies here in a little bit. Okay. So that brings me to the next slide, please. This is one of the things that was most shocking to me. There's a scientist named Dr. George Bartsaki, and what he did is he took CAT scans of heroin addicts and what that did to their brains, and then he took CAT scans of gaming addicts. And I'm not talking about the child that spends 2 hours on Saturday and a half hour every day after school. I'm talking about the child who spends 9 hours a day every day, right? They took CAT scans of heroin addicts and gaming addicts, and then they brought in neurologists as an experiment to have them identify who's the gamer and who is the heroin addict. And the neurologist could not tell the difference. His conclusion is that screen addiction and heroin are exactly the same for the effects of the brain. It impacts the brain the same way. So that kind of gives us a little context of what we're looking for. And I am not trying to scare you, though I will tell you it scared me when I learned this. I am just telling you this is really, as parents, this is what we're facing, and we have to probably make some hard decisions one way or the other. Next screen, please. So quickly, we'll talk about social media. And I've said gaming and social media. I've mostly talked about gaming. Social media is exactly the same thing. Every single minute, there are 65,000 new Instagram photos posted. A minute. Every minute, there are 3 million new Facebook posts. That's why you can never keep up with your Facebook feed, right? There's 3 million a minute. There's 3.5 million new YouTube videos every single minute. And with one messaging app, there are 44 million new messages every single minute in the United States alone. That is astounding. 18 to 24-year-olds in 2011, so this is 8 years ago, we're averaging 109 text messages a day. That's about every 5 minutes. And I am sure that's bigger now. And what that turns out to is our children are tapping and swiping and clicking 2,617 times a day. That's 1 million times a year. Can you imagine how giant our thumbs are going to be if we keep doing this? It's just going to have it's going to be a problem, right? So next slide. It also has deep ramifications for productivity in the workforce. The top set of data, the yellow square is work hours. The black bars are times when a person was online on their phone. The top user is an average user, and the bottom user is a heavy phone user. In the yellow box, which is work hours, the average user is only at work 2/3 of the day. The rest of the time, this is Lori B. Lori B is actually on her phone, though she's getting paid. The bottom person, that's Lori L. from Granville, Michigan. The only time during the workday she's not on her phone is at lunch. Do you see the little square in the middle? That's 11:30 to 12:30. So whoever she eats with, she actually talks with them. But during the rest of the day, all morning, she's on the phone, and she gets a little bit of stuff knocked out in about 2 hours in the afternoon. This is a profound productivity crunch, and Simon Sinek has noticed that in the workplace, people our age and younger, they take their phones, put them in their pockets, turn them off, put them on their phone. Millennials keep their phone on, face up, with the keyboard here, and they work, and they're constantly checking their phone while they're working. This is a productivity nightmare for anybody who hires employees. Next slide. So next week, that's a lot of information that I just gave you. At the parenting seminar, I will have a handout that has all of this information. I'm going to give you an extensive list of addiction indicators. So if you have concerns, I think maybe we have a problem, I'll give you a longer list I'm about ready to share with you. I'm also going to talk about tools that you'll be able to use to protect your family and how they work. And there's different categories of ways to use them. And then we'll talk a little bit about some games that we let our children play, how we monitor it, and then categories of games we don't let them play at all. And we'll get into that more, but because we have a bit of a time crunch this morning, I can't do that. So next slide. So what are some things that we can do to protect our kids, and what are some things that we should look for? Here's the first thing. So this is a shorter list, but one indicator is, are they staying up later and later on the computer? And like I said at the beginning, they started just playing for an hour till 10, and it's 10:30, and it's 10:45, then you go to bed, and you never know, then it's 12, and you wake up in the middle of the night because you hear a sound, and you're clicking, clicking, clicking. Like, what is going on? And your kid is up, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're supposed to be up the next day at 9 or 8. And what happens to the kid? Groggy and cranky, right? Who's lived through that, right? We know that. So that's one. Are they getting up later and later? Are they hiding devices or the device usage? Actually, if you find that out, that's a good thing, because they already know they have a problem. If they're hiding it, they already know. First off, we have a problem. They may not think they have a problem, but they know that you think they've got a problem. And so it's good. If you find that out, that's divine, that's a revelation from God. Be grateful. Third, are they anxious or fidgety when they don't have their device? So if they can't bring it, is there like, oh man, like a smoker who's trying to quit smoking, right? And they still have those nicotine urges? Are people like that when they don't have their screens? That's a big warning sign, because now this is a physiological thing. You're starting to see that manifestation of physical addiction and definitely psychological addiction. Fourth one, are they losing interests in things they used to love? Sports, friends, hobbies. Kid used to love to swim in the pool in the backyard, or go to the pool at the park, or play basketball or football or soccer or whatever that is, and now hasn't done it all summer. All he wants to do is stay inside and play Clash of Clans. That's a big one, because that's changing the affections of people's hearts. And for me as a parent, I don't want that. 5, are they having trouble regulating their emotions? Remember when I talked about myelination? Myelination impairment, it causes problems with the way that we process emotions. And so what you'll have is a loss of empathy. You will start seeing a child who becomes very apathetic or lazy, but is also volatile at the same time. So slow, apathetic, lethargic on one hand, but they go off like a stick of dynamite for slight provocations. This may simply be a sign of too much screen time. And what they're seeing a lot of times, children who are getting referred for ADHD, when they take them off of screens and computers for 60 days, have lost all their ADHD symptoms. That's not all of them, but that is definitely what we're seeing. And ADHD diagnoses are up 300% in the last 12 years. And my guess is that it is not our children are all of a sudden there's 300% more kids getting ADHD. It's an environmental factor, and I think part of it is this. And I think we have data to bring that up, to at least try it. So, having trouble with emotions, apathetic, and then here, this is related, are they apathetic and easily bored? The easily bored part is the problem, because you can actually play and toss a baseball in the front yard, or throw a frisbee, or go out and ride your bikes. You don't get the dopamine hit that you do from 5 hours of gaming. You just don't. And so what's happening is the kids are getting so addicted to the large doses of dopamine that the stuff that used to cause joy and pleasure doesn't anymore. The good news is that there is a thing in our brains called neural plasticity. And what it basically means is that our brains are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that they self-heal. And if you take a kid off of gaming for 30, 60, 90 days, their brain just goes back to normal for the most part. It's that's good news. So we don't need to panic. We're just looking at where we are. And then the last one, are they perpetually tired but always wired? You know what I mean by wired? Like just amped up on the inside, but oh, I'm so exhausted. Yes, they're exhausted because they stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning. You still made them get up at the regular time, but they have so much dopamine going through their body, and the desire for the dopamine, it just jacks everything up. Everything is out of whack. So those are addiction indicators. What are some things that we can do? Next slide, please. Oh, and before I go on, if you're right now, you're like, oh, I know exactly what's going on now. This answers my questions. I thought it, now I know it. You're thinking, when you get home, I'm just taking that phone away. Let's talk about that for a minute, okay? First thing, if you're going to do that, you can't just take the phone away and not replace it. You have to put something back. And so if you have a child that loves sports games, you're going to have to get them involved in real life sports. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost time. You're going to have to drive them someplace. But you can't take it away and not replace it with something. So you have to count the cost before you're going to do it, and you should have a plan in place before. And our son, Michael, the oldest one, he was starting to exhibit these symptoms that I've talked about, and we told Michael, Michael, he's tall, you saw him, he's like a giant, right? Michael, you're going to play basketball. I don't want to play basketball. Well, I don't care if you want to play basketball or not. You're going to play basketball, and I'll tell you what, if after the first year of, was it 6 months or a year? 6 months. We said, if you don't like it after 6 months, we'll let you quit. 3 weeks later, Michael has the audacity in the kitchen to tell Cheryl and I that he's upset with us because we didn't force him to play basketball earlier. But he's mad at us. So if you're going to do it, you have to replace it with something. Taekwondo, martial arts, give the kids something to do that gives them dopamine stimulation, exercise, and an adrenaline rush. It has to be something like that. You can't go from playing 9 hours of Call of Duty and then ask the kid to read for 9 hours. It's not the same thing. Reading is fantastic, and they definitely should read, but you have to find something that's going to replace it. Then, if you are actually going to take the device away, it is probably not a good idea to just say, hey, we need to talk about this, give me your device, you're done. Because what would happen if somebody did that to you? No warning, they just come, they swoop in, and they take away a privilege that you've had. How would you respond? Would you be open to it? Thank you, Mom, I know you love me? No, you would not. They'd be mad. So what we actually did with Michael is we said, Michael, I know that this is a problem, and you know this is a problem. You've tried to fix it. We've let you try to fix it. It didn't work. And so we're going to take the phone away, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you 7 days. And so the first day, you get to play this much. The second day, you get to play this much, which is a little less. The third day, a little bit less. Fourth day, fifth day. The sixth day, just like 20 minutes. And on the seventh day, you log on, chat to all your friends and say, I'm going to be offline for 60 days, and I'll see you guys in 2 months. And that's what we did, and it did not cause a tremendous amount of problem because I had 7 days for that to sink into my child's brain. It's like, you know what, this is a problem. My parents do actually love me. They were fair and gentle and kind about how they did this, and then we replaced it with other stuff. And so that's a good way to do it if that's the spot you're in. And we'll talk more about this at the parenting seminar if you have questions. Next slide, please. So here's some guidelines. And so for grandparents, and the one thing that I need to say is that I am couching all of this as if it's our children, but the average gamer and the average social media user in the United States is 30 years old. This is not a children's problem. This is an everybody problem. And so we're going to go through this. I'm saying it as children, but the reality is there are almost certainly men in here who are addicted to games, and there are almost certainly women here who are addicted to Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram. Right? It connects to women in a different way than men does, but it connects all the same. And so I'm talking to all of us, including myself. So rule number one, or guideline number one, is no dopamine rush games. None of those highly addictive, highly stressful, first-person, immersive type shooter games, things that just really amp up your emotions. None of those for little children, because their frontal cortex, your frontal cortex, the thing that says yes and no, that's not fully developed till 20 to 24 years old. Your 9-year-old doesn't have it hardly at all. That's why they do such weird, impulsive things. The yes-no thing isn't there yet, right? So no dopamine rush games like Battlefield 4 for a kid who's 10. It's just too intense for them, and it's designed to hook them, and they can't defend themselves. Next one, nothing that rewards them for logging in each day. Two of my little guys over here, they were playing this phone game. They said, Dad, I know it's not computer day, but I just need to log in because I get 5 coins for logging in, and then I'll log right off. Like, no. That is designed to get you to log in every single day. It's an addiction mechanism. So we banned all games that reward you for that, because I think it's dirty pool. The next one, no apps that cover your tracks. Snapchat and Instagram, if you don't know what those are, you send somebody a message, it goes to that person, they open it on their phone, they have a set period of time, and it disappears off of their phone, it disappears off of the sender's phone, and here's the thing, it actually disappears off of the server. It is gone. They wipe it. So the FBI can't say, hey, I want to see the Snapchat from this person. Now, maybe the FBI can, but that is not how it works. They wipe it off the phone and the server. It is completely gone. They say it's a privacy thing. What it really is a way to send stuff that you don't want mom and dad to see. And that's where you get sexting and all that type of stuff. And then here's the thing. Every day, there should be a time. Every week, there should be a day. And every year, there should be a period where there is no technology at all. And one of the recommendations from a book I read is it was 1 hour a day with no technology. In our family, we do 1 hour a day of technology. And that's working out pretty good. 1 day a week, no technology, that's one of the recommendations. And then what we'll do frequently is in December, we just do no December. No technology for entertainment in December, and we hang out as a family for the whole Christmas season. Thanksgiving to Christmas, no tech, we just hang out and we enjoy each other. And the first 3 days you go through withdrawal and everybody's all shaky, and then after that we're good. And we enjoy it. Next slide, please. And then here's a big one. Don't give your child the iPad while you're driving. And you shouldn't be on the iPad while you're driving, just incidentally, okay? You have a captive audience in the car. So car time is conversation time. You can cause them to talk to you because there's nothing else to do. And so use that time while you're driving to find out what's going on in their lives, if there's any problems, what you can pray about for them, how things are going at school, etc., etc. Use that. That is super valuable time for parents. 0 expectation of privacy for your children. You should inspect their phones. You should read all of their text messages. You should look through all of their Google Drive for all the pictures that they have saved. There should be 0 expectation of privacy whatsoever. And at any time, hey, hand me your phone. Take me to Google Images. I want to see what you got there. Let me see what you got on WhatsApp. And you should do that all the time. 0 expectation of privacy. And then finally, no computers behind closed doors. You are asking for trouble if you give a kid a computer and privacy. If you give a boy a computer and privacy with no internet filtering, I don't have to tell you what's going to happen. You're asking for a heap of trouble, and more trouble than you can possibly imagine. So that brings the last 2 points. No screens before double digits. We didn't do this because I didn't read this until it was later. If I was starting all over and we have another child, I really might consider that. No screens for entertainment until they're 10 or 11. Just don't want that as a habit. The first picture is a kid who's 3 years old, glued to a phone playing a game. It's not what I want. I don't think that's what we want as a society. So that's one. That's a hard one. I understand it. But great parenting costs. It always costs. And then the second one, internet filtering or monitoring on every single device. And this is the picture that I paint. If you have a tablet or a phone or a computer in your home and it has no internet filtering or monitoring, where it's actually watching what the kids are doing or what everybody is on it, it is the same as bringing in, let's say you have 3 devices in your home. Well, let's say you have 5, because that's probably the average. It would be the same as taking 5 rattlesnakes and putting them in your house. Do rattlesnakes hunt you down and bite you? No, in general they don't. But is there anybody here who'd be willing to live with 1 rattlesnake in their house? No, but that is what will happen, because if you give a child or an adult a phone that has no internet, temptation is going to seek them out. And if it doesn't, it's going to present itself anyways. It's extremely dangerous. I think it is absolute insanity, and please forgive my very harsh and dogmatic words, but I think it's absolutely insane to have computers that are not monitored by the parents, because it's just going to happen. Next slide. So let me close with this, and then Cheryl's going to come up and finish. There was a famous study in the 70s, and what they did, they were studying addiction and cocaine. And doctors took these rats, put them in a cage. Each rat was in one cage, so each rat was alone in a cage. They did this with hundreds of rats. Put them in a cage. They had a little lever for food, lever for water, and then there was a lever for cocaine water. There was cocaine in the water. And what they found is that by the end of the study, every single rat, or like 99.9% of the rats, were hopelessly addicted to cocaine. And the conclusion of the study was that cocaine is hopelessly addictive. It's the most addictive drug ever invented, and if you try it, you're going to get addicted. The problem is that in real life, when humans took cocaine, it wasn't that addictive. I am not advocating cocaine, all right? But I'm saying it's not 99.99% addictive. There was a problem with the study. Professor Bruce Alexander, he says, this is wrong. There's something wrong with the study, and I think I know what they did wrong. So he reproduced it. He did the 70s version, where they had all the rats in solitary confinement, locked in a cage, and then he built Rat Park, which is Disney World for rats. They had things they could hide in if they were nervous, cans they could get in, tubes to crawl through, wheels to run on, male rats and female rats living together, doing what male and female rats do, right? It was just heaven on earth for rats. And both of them had a lever for food, and a lever for water, and a lever for cocaine water. The rats in solitary confinement, almost 100% addiction. Again, the rats in Rat Park got addicted at the exact same rate that humans do. And what he concluded was rats are social animals. And when you take them out of society, move them away from human interaction or from rat interaction, they become very susceptible to addictions. And when he said, without healthy socialization and connection, a rat seemed to be much more vulnerable to addiction. And his conclusion was this: the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. And my fear with gaming is that when a child is spending 7 hours in their room a day and their only friends are virtual friends. I heard this joke. I'm 3 people away from having 500 Facebook friends, and I'm 2 people away from having 2 real-life friends, right? It's kind of funny, but it's not funny. But that's where we're tending to go. We're connected. We have virtual friends, but no true connection. And that is perfect soil for addiction, technology addiction especially, to grow in. And so I'm going to finish with all the technical stuff, and Cheryl's going to come on up, and she's going to close. And so while she's coming up, I'll just finish with my 2 concerns. We've talked about the psychological and physiological reasons for the addiction, but the way that it manifests itself in boys and in girls and in men and women is very different. With boys, they run around in Battlefield 4 and they have a kill streak of 20-1. They really think that they have done something. It taps into God's innate drive for men to accomplish and to conquer. And that is the genius and the diabolical genius of what they've done, is because running around in these virtual worlds and doing all these amazing feats of strength and bravery and heroism gives a false sense of accomplishment, but in reality, they have accomplished nothing. They have improved their hand-eye coordination, and they're very good at making fast, minute adjustments with their thumbs. That's a real-life, I guess, skill, but it's not very useful in the marketplace, okay? So for boys, it gives a false sense of accomplishment, but that's enough. Whether it's real accomplishment or fake accomplishment, the brain doesn't know the difference, and so that's why it's so addictive for boys. For girls, it actually talks about who they are. Social media and getting a bunch of likes on an Instagram photo and taking 27 or 40 selfies to get that perfect one where you got the perfect puckered lips, right? And everything's fine, and there's nothing shiny. You post that and you get a bunch of likes on it. That talks to a girl's worth. So for a boy, it's his accomplishment, and to a girl, it's his worth. But it's a very dangerous game for girls because the internet world is cruel. And so they may be successful for a while, but then they're not. And all of a sudden, their worth is tied to other people's opinions of themselves. And we know from Scripture we are not to compare ourselves to others. And so it's brilliant in the way that they've done it for stockholders, the way the companies have done this. But it is very dangerous as well, and as parents, we need to know. So, Cheryl, why don't you come up and you can talk about the hope.
So this is all new for us. We do not have grandparents that knew what we would be going through, that could warn us. We have had to figure this out as we go. And the first time I heard this talk, it was very, very difficult for me to hear. In a way, it traumatized me. There's much more to this talk than you guys have heard, but it was a good wake-up call. I needed to understand this is what is happening. It made me think about how Jesus tells us in John 10, he says, the thief comes but to steal, to kill, and to destroy. It is true, through technology, the hearts of our children have been stolen. They do not long for the things of God. They long for as many likes on Instagram and Facebook and as many kills that they can get on the video games. But our job as parents is to draw their hearts back to God. And I want to encourage you that it is not impossible. Jesus tells us in John 16, verse 33, he says, these things I have spoken to you, that in me you might have peace. In the world you will have affliction, but be of good comfort. I have overcome the world. Jesus knows exactly how to overcome this problem, and he wants to tell you exactly what to do. And so we need to keep our eyes on him. He will tell us one step at a time. He will ask us, like he asked Peter, to step out of the boat and to walk towards him on the water. We will feel like we are walking on water when we begin to fight the current of social media and video games. But as we look into the eyes of Jesus, he will begin to empower us. If we begin to look down and focus and obsess about all the terrible things about technology, we will begin to sink into the water and we will begin to drown. But even then, Jesus is there to pick us up, to hold us, and to guide us to himself, even in those moments when we don't know what to do, when we feel exasperated with our children. I want to share with you a verse that God gave us this week. And it is Proverbs 2, verse 33. It says, but he that obeyeth me shall dwell safely and be quiet from fear of evil. That is such an encouragement that if we will turn to him, he will comfort us. We will be safe from the turmoil that is around us. We will be safe. And there's something he wants us to focus on. If you look in Deuteronomy, he tells the people what they can do. It's not rocket science. He tells them how they can feed the heart of their children. It is not complicated. It is very simple. He says when you teach your children, do it when they rise up, when you go along the way, when you sit down in your home, and when you go to sleep. In Deuteronomy, it says those are the 4 key times that we naturally live with our children. We wake up, we have breakfast with them. We have lunch with them. We have dinner with them. And if we aren't, let's make more goals to have more meals together so we can sit and talk to them and talk to them about their day. When you go along the way means when you're on your way to Walmart or you're on your way to Home Depot, talk to your children. When you're dropping them off at school, talk to them. See what's going on in their world. Ask them questions. And when you lie down, at night, it is such an important time for us to invest in the hearts of our children. The last words that you speak to your children can change their lives. I know I was sharing this testimony with a woman in Juarez. She's a pastor's wife, and her daughter would have nightmares. Her daughter was 3 years old. She has always had nightmares at night. And I began to share about how important it is when you tuck your children at night to tell them words that will affirm them, that will encourage them. Words that God loves you and I love you and I'm praying for you and I believe that God has a very important plan for your life. Well, what was interesting is she would yell at her daughter every time that she would tell her to go to bed. Go get into bed. Get into bed right now. You're staying up too late. Get into bed. And it was very disturbing to that little girl. So her mom heard when I shared, the words that we say to our children is so important. She began to change her strategy. And for the first night in years, she said, honey, I love you. God loves you. I'm going to pray for you. And she did not yell at her daughter. And when she tucked in her daughter that night, it was the first time she did not have nightmares. That goes to show the power of you as a mom and a dad in the lives of your children. It is more powerful than social media, than Facebook, than Instagram, the video games. Your words, your influence, your love, your hugs can change and will change the lives of your children. In fact, that is the one thing that God has commanded us and is telling us will change our culture, is you, each parent that is here. If you read with me in Malachi, it is actually the last verse that God gave to the people of Israel before he was silent for 500 years. If you look up the very last verse in Malachi, the last verse in the Old Testament, it says this, Malachi 4, verse 6, and he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with cursing. So what he's saying there is that is his last and greatest hope. When Jesus came, he would turn our hearts to him. After he turns our hearts to him, our job is to turn our hearts to our children and for their hearts to be turned to us and for us to guide them and lead them to Jesus. And as we guide them and lead them to Jesus, the pull of technology will not be so great. They will long for our communication more than the likes on Facebook and Instagram. They will long to play football in the backyard with dad instead of going and shooting some fake guns on video game. And so I want to encourage you today to get on your face before the Lord and say, God, forgive me. I have allowed technology to take over my heart. I have longed for Facebook and Instagram and social media more than I've longed for your approval, but no more. I'm falling before you and I'm asking you to forgive me, to renew my relationship with you, and as I'm renewed in my relationship with you, that my relationship with my children will grow stronger and stronger and stronger. And then we will guide them to the feet of Jesus. We will be able to have times where we read the Bible to our children. As we tuck them in, we will pray with them. And we will begin to see our homes transformed. Our hearts will be transformed. Our children's lives, our homes, our community, our culture, our nations, and our world through your family and through the influence you have with your children. So let me pray for us. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that you give us technology. The gospel of Jesus Christ has gone to Iran, has gone to Iraq, has gone to Saudi Arabia, goes to Venezuela, and tells these people about Jesus, and they are able to hear the gospel and be saved. Technology is very wonderful and powerful. but it is also very destructive because Satan wants to use it to destroy our families and to destroy us. But we are coming to you this morning, asking that you would renew our hearts and passions for you, that we would look to you and accept your forgiveness. You give us grace. You do not hold our sins against us. You give us mercy, you give us forgiveness, and you give us a new start every single day. And so I just pray on behalf of each one of us here that you would give us a longing for more of you, for a desire to be more in your word, to be more in fellowship with other Christians. And as our hearts are stirred more for you, that we would be able to draw the hearts of our children into relationship with you, that we would teach them your word and your truth, and you would transform our homes for your glory and for your kingdom, so that this world will see that there is a Jesus. There is a Jesus who died for them and saved them and wants to radically transform their life. And so we thank you for the work that you're going to do in our homes and in our lives. And we ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Well, hey, thank you very much. For those of you who are thinking about coming to the parenting seminar next week, I really hope that you will join us. This, by the way, is the heaviest message we do, right? The parenting seminar is a lot more fun. There's funny stories that go in it. But this is a sobering message. It's not going to be 5 more versions of something like this next week. And one thing about the seminar is it's not just for people with children currently. It's also useful for grandparents. Because as a parent, you never stop parenting, and you never stop growing, and you never stop pouring into your children. So we encourage anybody who's interested to come. And what we try to do, the heart of the seminar, is we try to take the biblical precepts that you probably already know. We go over those, and then we try to use those to shine light on areas where well-intentioned parents typically make mistakes. So it's very practical. So there's theological aspect to it, but there's a lot of, well, how does this actually work? How does it work with this kind of kid? How does it work with that type of kid? So we try to make it as practical as possible using those biblical steps. And so we look forward, and if you have questions, we'll be in the back, and we're looking forward to it.